This is my absolute favorite brush. It's a 1.5 inch flat, and it is absolutely amazing for putting in washes. So your wash is the background, and that's this area here with a little bit lighter area right around the lemons. So what I want to do is I want to put in a graduated wash. I'm going to mix opposite colors and get a neutral, okay? So let me see how I can get a nice neutral. I'll use a little bit of my alizarin crimson. And I'll put it right here. And I'm going to use this Windsor green blue shade. And you can see that that comes out sort of neutral. I need to put a little bit more red, but it's a nice dark. Now, I don't want my background to be that dark. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to add a lot more water to it, okay? And when you are painting your backgrounds and doing a wash, a lot of times I will do a wet on wet process first, okay? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to prop this up so that you can see. Okay, I'm going to wet the entire background that I'm going to paint with that neutral color, and I'm going right to the edge of where the fabric is covering the table, and around the lemons, and over on the other side where the edge of the table is. I'm using clean water, and what's really important, and you'll learn this the more you paint, that you want to recognize the how wet your paper is. And you will see there's a sheen on, I don't know if you can see it, but there's a sheen on the paper. I'm going to hold it up and see if that helps. See, that's quite wet, and in fact there's a couple little puddles here that I'm going to lift up. Okay. Now, the next thing I'm going to do, clean water on my brush, and I'm going to add it into this neutral. Okay. And what I want to do is I want to start over here on this side, and you'll notice that as I go down the page, it gets a little lighter, okay? I want it to be light in this area where the light of the, where the light of the actual lighting is. So I'm going to do a little bit of, okay. Now I'm going to have a little bit more water on my brush. I use my cellulose sponge to actually control that. And then I'm just going to, and you want to work, I'm just going to go between the two darker edges. Okay, so I don't know if you can see this, but it's a little bit lighter in the center where the lighting on the lemons is. You can see that. Now, the reason I wet the paper first is there's capillary action that draws the pigment into wet spaces. And if you haven't painted an area and it's dry, the capillary action won't pull the pigment into the dry area. Okay. Now, I am going to do the next area I'm going to do is the fabric, because I want to let things dry a little bit. The thing about watercolor is you do have to be patient. If you're impatient, you can get a hair dryer out and you can dry things. But if I put wetness right against this, it will bleed into my next color, and I don't want that. So I'm just going to leave a little hairline area so it doesn't mix, and I can always paint that in later. I want to make the foreground a little bit more color than what's in this photograph. So I'm going to mix a violet. Violet is on the opposite side of the color wheel from yellow. So it's yellow, violet, purple. It's red and green, and it's blue and orange. And that probably has been, you've seen that in your lesson plan on color mixing. So here I am. I'm going to take my older brush and I'm going to mix a little bit of the alizarin crimson. I'm going to put it over here and clean that off. And then I'm going to add the cobalt blue and see if I like that color. If I don't like that color, then I'll try it with Prussian blue. You don't have to, yeah, that's pretty good. You don't have to use the colors that you mix. If you don't like them on your palette, then start again and mix something that you do like. All right, so I like that. That looks nice. All right, again, I'm going to do wet on wet. So I have clean water on my brush. I take a little bit off and I just control the amount of water. I'm going to wet this and I'm going to leave a little tiny area right next to the background, the wash in the background. And I am going to then put in the violet color around the lemons. And I think it's going to be really lovely because that violet color will complement. It's called complementary color because it's on the opposite side of the color wheel. So we're going to get this wet so it makes a nice smooth transition. And then I can add paint a little bit later to form the folds. When I do wet on wet, you always want to look at your paper from an angle because often you can't see if you have a little spot that you haven't wetted. Okay, so you always want to look at your paper at an angle to see how much of gloss or a gleam is on the paint, the actual paper. Okay, so now I'm going to take this nice violet color and I'm just going to add it around my lemons. And it can be very light at first. I always use a four-step process. That four-step process is light color, going from light to dark, large to small areas in your painting. And I'm going to need a little bit more of the blue. And then, so I do the color blocking first. Excuse me, I got a little sidetracked here. One thing, this is a good example. Always when you're doing large areas and you're painting in large areas, make sure you mix enough of your color so that you don't have to stop like I just did and remix, because you want to have enough so that it covers the area that you're painting. All right, so that I think is a great start. So I'm just going to let that dry for a few minutes. Okay, So let me go back to the 4-step process that I was talking about. The first step is light color blocking, which is what we've just done. We've put in a graduated wash in the background, and we've got a light violet on the fabric in the foreground. The next thing I'll do, when this dries a little bit, I'll start to add the yellow of the lemon. The second layer is you start to add your medium tones and textures. So I would start to work on the textures of the actual skin, lemon skin, and the textures of the segments of the lemon. Then you add the darks as the third layer, and the last layer you put in your shadows. Okay, so that kind of gives you an idea of the 4-step process. Okay, with watercolor, the white of the paper becomes your white. It's exactly opposite of oil and acrylics, where you start your painting with darks and then you add your lights as detail at the very end. So I want to make sure that I have this inner segment area drawn, so I know exactly where not to put my color. I want white around the edges, beyond the segment. And I can erase this pencil mark later after I do this first area. Okay. All right. So now I'm going to actually clean my palette and make a little more room to mix the yellows that I want. And I use paper towels for cleaning my palette, but I do not use them for picking up areas, wet areas on the paper, because you'll get the actual pattern of the paper towel and you won't like it in your painting, trust me. So I always have little regular facial tissues handy, and if I need to dab something on my painting, I use my facial tissues. Okay, so clean water on a brush, and I'm going to actually look at my paints. Again, these are the colors that I'm using. I like the Aureolin. That's this one. I think that that's closest to the lemon color, although you'll notice that there is some orange in it. But I'm going to start with this one as the first under color. And I probably won't mix any other color into it for right now. So I'm just going to do a little bit of this, and it's going to go all the way around. I got into that white pithy part, sorry about that. And again, if your foreground is not dry, you want to leave a little tiny area between a hairline line so that you don't have it actually bleeding in. Okay. Now I'm going to show you something that is just wonderful about watercolor. This is wet on wet. Okay, so now I've got the lemon yellow, or the Aureolin actually, on my painting, on the lemons. So I can now add a little bit of the new gamboge. Okay, that's that more orange color, and I can go in and I can put it around where I see that brighter color. Okay, so I can then start to shape my object, the lemon. Okay, so see how lovely that is, and it goes in. It's very soft because you're using wet on wet. So the capillary action again will pull the color into the area that you're painting. Okay, so I'm going to use a little bit of the aureolin in the center for the segments because those are light. Do that. And I'm going to leave the actual center where where that pithy pulp part is. I'm just going to leave it white. The white of the paper is the highlight that you're going to use. Okay. So now I'm going to let that dry for a minute, and I'm going to go back to the wrinkles on the foreground because this feels pretty dry to me. It's still damp, and the way you can test is to put your wrist or the back of your hand to the paper, and you'll feel that it's cool. So that means it hasn't completely dried. And you'll want to practice this because a lot of times you'll find that the way the paper and the pigment absorbs into the paper depends upon how dry and wet it is. Okay, so I'm just going to do, there's one of my lines in the fabric. Here's another line. And then this comes over here and is a line underneath the lemons. All right, now I'm going to show you something in a second that is also wonderful about watercolor. Okay.